Our next speaker is Dr. Kasturi Bhattacharya, who is going to talk on something different and interesting, navigation tools in orbit and oculoplasty. On to you.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
we can.
Okay, let me arrange. My slides are seen, right? You can see my slides?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
So at the outset, I would like to thank Dr. giving me this opportunity. I'll be speaking on technological updates in orbit and oculoplasty. So what I believe that the four ways how technology has changed or can change the future of orbit and oculoplasty surgery is number one, navigation guidance, which I'll be talking in details. Then the 3D printing, the robotic surgery, and the AI, the AR, and the VR. So this cutting edge technology for precision in orbit, basically a navigation guided surgery, which I am been using for the last 5 years at Sri Shankardev Netralaya using the Medtronic system. However, there are other systems like the Brain Lab, the Striker, the 70 Surgical. What is this basically? This is basically a GPS system where, like, when we drive a car, we have a system which gives us a roadmap. Exactly the same thing happens in the navigation system where the data is taken and this is being loaded in the computer, giving us a real-time updates. And these data can be in the form of the images taken from the CT, the MRI, and the MRA. And the real-time updates can be the intraoperative landmarks, like they guide us during the surgery. They help us know exactly whether we have reached the site that we wanted to reach and the position of the implant and also the tumor resection, especially in challenging area. So the advantage of this whole system is that you can have a real-time data interpretation, then you can have in the bone window, you can color code, and also you can also color code the area with the CT, you can have an MRI or an MRA reconstruction. Another important advantage is that you can go for segmentation. That means you divide the data into bone and the soft tissue, which can be done manually in most of the system, but however, some of the system like Stryker has the auto segmentation. Mirroring is very useful in unilateral disease, especially in those having the fracture or nocturnus. Here, what we do, we load the images twice and merge the mirrored orientation onto the original one. And this helps you identify the defects and also quantify the displacement. And most important, you can measure what is the amount of replacement you want to do in case of reconstruction, also design the PSI, the patient-specific images. So at Sri Shankardev Netrala, I have been using it extensively for the pre-operative planning in the pipeline for the customized reconstruction, especially for the orbital fractures where you have both the horizontal buttresses are being involved, the vertical buttresses are being fractured. Such situation of impure fracture which involves the wall, which involves the rim, in such situation, I think navigation helps in the precise realignment of the buttresses and customizes the reconstruction of the fracture of the orbital walls. So one of the major advantage that I had already mentioned is mirroring. So if you look here, what we do, we mirror the normal over the abnormal. So this helps you to measure how much amount of displacement. Like in the case of fractured orbit, we get so much of expansion of the whole of the socket. So you can measure what is the maximum amount of expansion and how much amount of volume you need to go after the operation. So as you can see here, just before the operation, I have mirrored it. And then once I place my tracker, this is my stylet, you can see as this is an open socket, you can see my striker goes deep down into the maxilla. So following the surgery, like as you can see, following giving the implant, which is the MTM implant, because I need to give high amount of volume in such situation. Following the surgery, when you put the striker, when you put the stylet, then you see that reconstruction has been done very appropriately, and now my stylet is not normal one, and you can see the maximum amount of reconstruction could be done, and which can be actually you can measure it before the operation and you can plan the surgery. So what it gives a precise reconstruction, and also most important, it gives you the endpoint of the surgery. Like this is a patient here, I am showing you the same. You can see this mirroring the abnormal over the normal one. Then you have measured the amount of the volume expansion, and in my hand, for approximately 4 to 4.5 millimeter volume expansion, I need an implant of one. So sometimes we get volume expansion as high as approximately 20, 25. So depending on it, you can take the implant, which can be simple titanium or Medcore, or you can have the MTM or MTB. So a situation like this, like in this girl, you can see that once I place it, you can just before the operation, and here her horizontal buttresses are being involved. So whenever we do a fracture surgery, the most important that first we need to stabilize the horizontal buttress. After doing this, like you can see, she has a fracture just medial to the canal, and so this is the infraorbital nerve that you can see here. And then what you have done, you can see a gross amount of volume loss. So I'm again using the MTB here. And then after the placement of it, and then once you place the navigation system at the end of the surgery, it gives you the end point of the surgery, and it shows that the appropriate amount of correction has been done. As you can see here, under the girdle, as you can see a mirroring done with different colors, and see the beautiful placement of the titanium implant, which has given an adequate correction of the volume following the surgery. Even in complex situation like this is an NOE fracture, really late onset, very bad NOE fracture with a canthal dystopia, with also fracture of the inferior wall, the medial wall, all of the NOE structures. Then you can see following the mirroring with the different color. And this is, you can see, it has gone involved almost up to the palatal bone, the posterior ledge. And then you go ahead with the surgery. And once you give the volume with it, and once you finish up the surgery, and also you correct the canthal displacement that has occurred in this child, and then at the end of the surgery, you know what is the end point of the surgery. And this is how the patient looks a month after the surgery. Very good correction. And if you see the placement of the implant bone medially and laterally, this you can see, this is a sagittal, medial aspect of sagittal, which can say that you can, yes, you have gone for the appropriate placement of the implant. Challenging situation of impure fracture like this affecting the wall and affecting the rim. Here the blue is a normal, so the whole of the skull, the blue has been mirrored over the pink, that is the expanded one, and according the surgery has been done, and you know that this is really a bad NOE fracture again. Here I had also done the conjunctival DCR, and after managing the horizontal and the vertical buttresses, I have given a double layer of Medpro sheet that you can see here, and this is to give an adequate amount of volume, and on the table you can assess what is the volume that has been corrected. And once this is being done, and also I corrected the canthal dystopia by using a T-shaped titanium plate where the anterior limb of the MPL has been sutured to the horizontal limb and the posterior to the vertical limb. And this is, you can see the 1 day post week, 1 week post op. And this is the interesting part. You can see these are the buttresses correction with the implant that you can see here. Post-operatively, this is how we have done, and we have given the Medpro sheet. But if you see the volume expansion, the expansion of the socket because of the fracture, and you can see a very beautiful realignment and also giving an adequate correction of the socket. And this is the patient approximately 3 months. This is the 3 months picture following the surgery. And if you see the inophtalmos correction, a very adequate correction of the inophtalmos only with the implant. So as I have already mentioned, navigation really helps in the surgery in the optic canal, because we know the optic canal, which is 0.6 to 1 centimeter in length, and which lies approximately 40 to 46 centimeter deep down in the orbit. So you really need a system to guide you, which helps you in the navigation, especially when you have a direct or indirect traumatic optic neuropathy. So once you know that you have a traumatic optic neuropathy, and you can go ahead with the surgery with a very minimally invasive procedure, and this really guides you throughout the surgery. So again, I repeat why I need a navigation, because it is a GPS in which we set a target and aim to reach the destination with precision and accuracy. As I've already mentioned, the data is taken in the CD, and then this is being fitted into navigation console. And once it is done, you can read the data in all the eggshell, the coronal and the sagittal. Most important are the DICOM images in all coronal, eggshell and the sagittal. Then you can mark the point of the entry at this, you can see here. And once you mark the point of the entry, you go for the registration of the system, create an electromagnetic field. Then you have a tracker, which I call it the striker, the stylet. This guides you during the surgery, exactly how you have a GPS system when you drive the car. So this is a case of traumatic optic neuropathy, like a very minimally invasive surgery you can do. And this, I feel like it is not possible without something really guiding me. And this is, you can see the anterior ethmoidal blood vessel. This is really guiding me every step of the surgery. And as I go further down, that is approximately around 40 millimeter deep in the orbit. And I put my stylet out here. You'll see that, yes, I have reached the posterior ethmoid. So this is the stylet. It is showing that I have reached the posterior ethmoid. That means I need to go further down, around 6 to 8 millimeter further down, till I see the optic canal, where you see beautiful the Y-shaped annulus of zinc. And once you see the annulus of zinc, you are sure, like, it really guides the plane in which direction. That is most important, because it's such a small area, the orbital apex. So once you remove all the fracture side, then you see the optic nerve. So this patient, along with the fracture, had also a sheath hematoma. So I have used the MVR to remove the hematoma from the optic nerve sheath. And at the end of the surgery, you need to just give one or two suture in the caruncle. So another advantage of navigation, especially you know the relation of the optic canal in relation to the sinuses. Why this is important? Many times we see the Onodi cells, and when you have a Delano type 3 or a type 4 optic nerve, and when you have the Onodi cells with it, so then you can change your plan. Like I feel when there is a Delano type 3 or 4, it is better to go by a transnasal approach than to go by a transorbital approach. So this is what I like to share with you. See how it guides me during the surgery. This is just after removing the superior part, the orbital part of optic canal. See, this stylet is not going into the canal. It is every time I'm putting my stylet, it is going only into the sphenoid sinus. Then I have realized that yes, I have not decompressed the canal totally, and so I have further decompressed the canal, and then finally before I end the surgery again I have placed a stylet. And now once I place my stylet, you can see the stylet moves from the orbital part to the cranial part of the optic canal. It shows that I could decompress the optic canal very well. So it guides you not in the direction but also the end point of the surgery, as you can see in this patient where the stylet is telling me yes, I'm correct. Another important news implication, when you have situation like this, we know the frontal bone, when you have a foreign body more towards the cranial side, we are very skeptical because we know it really bleeds bad and sometimes it's really very dangerous. But if you can draw the plane and if you can follow the plane, like as you can see here, I'm exactly following what I have drawn it. If you go exactly by the plane, then also you can go for a very, very minimally invasive surgery, and you can remove the metallic foreign body, as in this child you can see, which was embedded in the frontal bone but also more towards the cranial side. So you can take about such challenging situation when you have something to guide you. And not even this, and the end point of the surgery is very important. Like this is a case that I would like to share. This is a case of the intraosseous hemangioma. Why I'm sharing you, in such situation when you have an intraosseous hemangioma, you need to remove the whole of the hemangioma. If you keep some remaining part, it might lead to postoperative bleeding. So you need to know beforehand that how much amount of excision you want to remove and how much amount of reconstruction. Reconstruction can be done by mirroring, where you know how much amount of volume to be given. But here I have done the 10-point registration before I have started with this surgery, so that every point has been registered and so that every point which I have marked could be, excised following during the procedure. And I know that I really need a big amount of reconstructive material. So what, before I have already planned it, you can see the whole of the anterior maxilla has been removed. But what is most important, it has helped me in planning then how much amount of volume I need to give. And this is the rib cartilage that has been used, not one, two rib cartilage has been used in order to reconstruct the whole of the anterior part of the maxilla. And this gives you a correspondingly better cosmetic correction. And you can see this has been reconstructed so well post-operatively. And also, as I have already mentioned, for the different type of apical tumor, whenever you have a tumor going deep down into the superior orbital fissure, like a case of neurofibroma, you know, it affects the sphenoid bone and sometimes goes to the superior orbital fissure. In such situation, navigation does help to give not only a good cosmesis and the volume, but also it helps you guide you during the surgery and the vision gets maintained. So here, these are the different indication, and as Santosh had already mentioned, thyroid is also one of the indication when we go deep to the superior orbital fissure in the balanced decompression, lateral wall decompression. It really gives you precise surgery and also helps you do surgical planning. So before I stop, I just want to show another 3-4 slides that is this all about technological updates in orbit and oculoplastic surgery. I feel no, this navigation is just the beginning. There's no limit to which the technology is evolving. And another evolving technology is the 3D printing, which all of us are using. The advantage is that you use the 2D images in the DICOM format, and these 2D images are transferred into the 3D images, and then this converted 3D images are being exported, and then the modeling has been done and exported into the STL format, and then you get the 3D implant. So such situation, when you have a bilateral fracture, here you cannot mirror. So when you have one side normal, one abnormal, you can mirror. But when you have a bilateral fracture like this, I think 3D printing really helps us to plan the surgery. And nowadays we use PSI, but which is extremely costly, which is not possible in Indian scenario. So these are some of the 3D images that I have been using, and I feel that besides helping in the orbital surgery, the fracture surgery, it helps in education. But one of the most useful thing is that you need to plan when you have a very, very bad contracted socket. Like this is a very bad contracted socket where you can see 10 millimeter contraction in all this vertical, the height, breadth, and the depth. So in such situation,
Ma'am, you have 1 minute remaining.
I'll just finish it. So this really helps you plan the surgery. So this is what I have used a very innovative technique. And here you can see I have mobilized the whole of the maxilla. And because I know that I need to give him this much amount of volume, where you can see I have used this technique for many other indication for oculoplasty surgery also. And you get a very good correction. Like as you can see here, that this is the pre-op and this is the post-op. So at least I could give a good amount of volume, and this patient already had surgery 4 to 5 times elsewhere. So before I conclude, I would like to mention that another technology, other technological advances are the AI, which has been published in many other literatures now, the robotic surgery, which is the state of the art surgery, especially useful in hard to reach area. But one I believe is the AR, that is the augmented reality. This will really help all of us, the oculoplasty surgeon, because this differs from the VR, this is a virtual reality, is that we have here 3D computer generated text and the objects which are actually being superimposed onto the real images. So you can have either a head mounted or the microscope mounted, like the Leica has already come out with this AR system where you can superimpose the real images over the the plane of your surgery. This gives a very effective and precise surgery. I feel that this is what we really need, especially when we operate in difficult to reach area. Thank you very much for your patient hearing.
That was as usual, an amazing talk of yours, Kasturi. Let's Vidya start off with the questions. Vidya?
Yes, madam. Madam, when we plan navigation surgery and acquire CT scan, do we give any specific request for the radiologist to take, madam? Like any protocol to be followed?
Yeah, that is very important. We need to have very thin slices, and the thinner the slices, it is better. And in my place, like we have already trained a radiological unit. I just write the navigation protocol, but when I write this, he understand it should be thin as 0.6 or 0.65 millimeter. So it's thinner than 1 millimeter, especially in situation the traumatic optic neuropathy or whatever it is. Otherwise, the system doesn't take up if you have a slices more than 1 millimeter. Along with it, if you have a DICOM images and if you have the MRI, MRA, it can holistically, you can superimpose everything, and it gives you where is the internal carotid artery, where is the ophthalmic artery. At least you can mark the areas where it becomes challenging or it may be unsafe to touch during the surgical procedures.
When we take thin slices and get more number of scans, is that a contraindication or is that a challenge in pediatric cases, madam? You did show some pediatric cases. Will it increase the risk of exposure or something?
Yeah, it is true, but I don't think the exposure is as high, because otherwise also we take 1.5 or maximum, only rarely we take 2 or 3, but 1.5 is the standard in, I think, the 3 Tesla. In the 3 Tesla, you get 1.5, less than 1, but the 1.5 Tesla, which most of the centers are using, they're usually taking 1.5. But it is very true. In children, except for fracture, the MRI is a better option. But in case of a fracture, and in every situation, you don't require navigation, even in fracture. But those worst cases where you really need to do a volumization, or especially if there's a bad anophthalmic socket operated multiple times, you need to know how much amount of reconstruction, then you need to do a mirroring and find out the volume.
Does this have a role in places like optic nerve fenestration and all that? And again, there are those soft tissues and all, which will also cause problems, in location.
Yes, Dr. Chitra, I have nice videos of optic nerve fenestration, and Dr. Mukesh and me, we always debate on it. Okay, so the optic nerve fenestration, like we can do without the navigation. How we do, like either the medial approach or supermedial approach. But what is the advantage of navigation in optic nerve fenestration? We know that the central retinal artery enters the optic nerve sheath approximately 10 to 12 to 14 millimeter length from the head of the optic nerve. So if we can measure what I do, I use the navigation in my optic nerve sheet. So from the head of the optic nerve, I just mark my point of entry and my point of exit, that is 6 millimeter. So I'm sure I don't go beyond 6 millimeter. There's no chance of injuring the central retinal artery. So that is one of the help. And I feel since I have the system, I have the benefit of making it more precise and helping having a better outcome. So I'm using, but it is not mandatory. Dr. Mukesh does beautiful optic nerve sheet penetration without the navigation. But I believe that yes, sometimes when you ask your fellows to start the surgery, and if you mark it, then you know sure they are not going beyond 6 millimeter and they are in the safer zone.
Right. One question. Very nice talk, Kasturi. Wonderful results. I was particularly interested in looking at the optic canal decompression. For example, you have a direct type of traumatic optic neuropathy. There's always that debate between the ENT surgeon, the neurosurgeon, and the ophthalmologist. You all are lucky to be working in a standalone eye hospital where there's, you have all the freedom to do it yourself. But given a choice, a nasal endoscopic approach versus the beautiful superomedial approach or a transcarancular that you showed, how do you rate the two approaches in terms of?
Yes, okay, let me start with it. First, the transcarancular approach that I have shown you is a very, very minimally invasive. Believe me, I can finish the surgery approximately 30 minutes. Like you can be as fast as like this, number one. Number two, it is a single surgeon. You don't require any other help. No one to help you with the suction. And especially the optical carotid recess, you never come near that zone because see the ophthalmic artery as it emerges from the internal carotid artery from the cranial to the orbital part, it goes from medial to the lateral. So by the time the ophthalmic artery enters the orbit, it is laterally. So I am coming this way. No chance of injuring the ophthalmic artery. And it is so easy. Like you can, if you have in the proper plane, if you can before the operation, you just go by the plane. You can see the entire ethmoidal blood vessel. You ligate it, you cut it, post it. The whole track you can draw it. Initially, I never used to draw the track, but now after I'm trying to learn this machine more. After drawing it, it has become a very fast and minimally invasive surgery, and a single surgeon can do it.
Kasturi, I had a case today where we had a fracture of the sphenoid with a direct piece compressing on the optic nerve. Do you think you can tackle these sphenoid cases, injuries, sphenoid fractures with fragment on the globe as well from the transcarancular approach as you would with, say, we could see a lot of visualization when our ENT surgeon worked with an endoscope. Do you feel the visualization and the kind of decompression that you can do is as effective with transcarancular approach?
Yes, sometimes I can see, I can go from one sphenoid sinus to the other sphenoid sinus. So it's very easy to go through this approach. Sometimes just for my own study, nicely you can go from one sphenoid to the other sphenoid, sir. And only if you really want to place an implant, supposing I don't think one of us will place an implant, no, sir. So if there is a fracture, you can go through this side and remove it, sir. And usually, initially, I started taking all the PL negative cases, sir. So, but when I had seen PL negative becoming PL positive, then slowly I have taken the one having vision. But any patient having vision 6 by 60 or better, I start with IVMP, everything. I try medically only. If I cannot do medically, then only explaining the pros and cons. Like one patient, I had a problem, sir. One patient was only PL positive and the surgery went very well, but I think the space is very small. I post-operatively he became PL negative, and I think that was the only problem. And then I have learned it. I have started drawing the measure, which initially I never used to point exit. I never used to mark it. The cylinder. Now I mark the cylinder. I follow the cylinder. So that is how like, and so no one to teach us also this system. Like I'm trying to learn this machine more by myself and exploring further what are the other indications that I can use it.
Yeah. I thought about a medial approach today, but then I preferred that to get the ENT surgeon and get him to do it. And they did a good job.
The navigation, sir, like then it helps in multiple ways, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kasturi. I think we could be
You're muted.
A wonderful topic. We'll come back to you if time permits.